The Electoral Act of 2022 underwent some revisions in terms of getting some amendments, kind of gearing up for the 2027 election. And citizens were kind of apprehensive about it because INEC worked diligently with civil society organizations to sensitize citizens on, you know, voter registration, making sure that people register to vote, really assuring them that their votes are going to count this time, that there wouldn't be rigging of election because there's going to be electronic transmission, in addition to having the bimodal voter accreditation system. So people will be accredited and it's going to be online. So the number of people who come to vote will tally to the total amount of votes counted. So that was what was really put out. There was a lot of sensitization. I can remember a lot of the civil society organizations that really took charge in this aspect, using digital, print, social media. The INEC chairman, Mahmoud Yakubu, at the time was everywhere. He issued press conferences. He participated. Um, he went over to, the UK, interviewed with BBC, and went to Chatham House and also discussed the validity of what they were doing with um, the digit. They are trying to digitalize the electoral process, and people were excited. People were apprehensive but excited. In addition to that, they saw, the various array of candidates that were, you know, running for presidency, and it seemed pretty exciting. The problem with this is that when it came to the presidential election, stories started coming up. Network is bad. There was a quote unquote glitch. So you had the form, the form EC8A just being manipulated everywhere. You get what I'm saying? Different parties, the votes were taken from different parties to another party. Just so many things going on with form EC8A. And thugs kept going all over the country, snatching ballot boxes, voter intimidation. You had, various news on social media and print media having people who were being unalived or seriously injured as a result of exercising their civic duty. This happened in the 2023 election. So, right now, people are very apprehensive about this amendment of the Electoral Act. What do you want to amend? They're saying, okay, in the amendment, it also states that it really amplifies the punishment of people who break the law in terms of the electoral law. So they're like, okay, you need to swear an oath stating your independence. So you are not affiliated with any political party. That is also in place. It also raised the ceiling based on the inflation going on in the economy in terms of what can be funded with presidential, governorship, senatorial, House of Reps. So there were ceilings in terms of what could be the amount that could be used for campaigning. So quite a few of those tweaks that happened in the Electoral Act. But what um, really stood out and what is the bone of contention is that citizens and civil society organizations want a situation where it is mandatory that the votes are electronically transmitted. The only problem with this amendment is that they are saying that if there is no network, let us revert to the manual transmission. Hello, that doesn't even make any logical sense. First of all, President Tinubu, if I'm not mistaken, allocated about ₦1 trillion towards INEC, and billions of dollars were used to make sure that the INEC electoral process was digitized. A lot of funding was used for that. A lot of effort was used towards that process, and we don't see that even going into play. So all this infrastructure that occurred preparing for 2023 election, what happened to it? What Professor Mahmoud Yakubu said is that if there is transmission of the votes in terms of putting it into the IREV, that is the IREV voter review portal. If you upload it into the portal and there's no network, when you get to a place where there is network, it will automatically upload. That was what Professor Mahmoud Yakubu said. So where does network even come into play? And even if you're saying, okay, it's still network problem. I think there was a content creator that said, why don't you just hire Starlink and let the satellite just focus on the entire country, and then you're able to electronically transmit results because INEC has enough money to do that. So these are things that um, people are having contention with, and why there were protests daily to go to the National Assembly saying no, it has to be mandatory. Okay, the voter education, it has to be mandatory, not just optional. Because what it's saying is that in section 60, subsection 4 of the amended Electoral Act, it's proposing that the mode of transmission should be at the discretion of INEC. So it's not even saying, oh, it is manual or electronic. It doesn't even specify. And in INEC's their educational material, it shows that the first option for transmission is actually manual. Then the digital is the second option. And this is going to cause voter apathy. It's going to cause voter apathy. People are not going to want to come out and vote because they would say that the votes are already predetermined. The outcome of the election is going to already be predetermined. So this is what um, people are just, these are the issues people are having. And the opposition, it kind of limits their chances of saying, okay, I would run a campaign and then I'll be elected through a free, fair, and credible election. You're now seeing, okay, this is why the ruling party is recruiting all these governors from the southwest, south south, southeast, north central, northwest, and northeast. So you now have, Nigeria just coming in to become a one party state. You can say with your mouth, oh, I'm a Democrat and this is against my. You can say, oh, that you're not trying to make Nigeria a one party state, but Nigeria is becoming a one party state, and oppositions are innately being divided from within, and there's always unrest in each of the oppositions or making the party um, uncomfortable for one opposition to be able to run, and the opposition seeming like an orphan. It's all strategic so that um, there is no free, fair, and credible election. It's just really, really unfortunate how the country has degenerated up to this point. If I were President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, this is what I would have done. I would have made the process transparent, made it a free, fair, and credible election, the same way they did with Buhari. He called Buhari and said, congratulations, you've won. But you don't want to do that. APC, you don't want to do that. If I were you, you're already going to win. Just make it free, fair, and credible and run a campaign. You've already recruited a bunch of these governors. The award chairman can go and then talk to the people to vote for their person. And then you just have a free, fair, and credible election and open the platform for a bunch of political parties to register. That's what was done in Ivory Coast. You just open it up because we Nigerians, we're narcissistic and we're egotistical. A bunch of people are going to want to be presidential candidates, and the opposition will be extremely fragmented that way. Not what you're doing. What you're doing is just putting it in our faces like, I am going to be president whether you like it or not, which is making it just a bad taste. It's just bad taste. You know, just make sure that it's a free, fair, and credible election. And You're not doing that because is it that you don't feel like you're doing enough of a job? Look at the Lagos Calabar Coastal Highway you are doing. Do you know the millions of people that don't have to sleep in traffic every day? Just that alone, you can win votes. That alone, the Lagos Calabar, you now have Sokoto Badagry. You now have that. The currency is relatively stable and it's only going to go down as more refineries are being built and as there's more processes in the value chain that we're not just a house of raw materials. If you just go to the Ajakuta steel mill and say, I want to revive that, that alone in itself. So you talk about some of the macro, you've done quite a bit of macro stuff using the corrupt decaying system we have now to get what you want. That's what you've been doing because Nigeria's system is corrupt. It's been corrupt for decades. Let's call a spade a spade. In the 70s, when civil servants saw that their personal interests were not in play with the Nigerian government, it was every man for himself and God for us all. That was when back in the 70s, that was when corruption started. So you are using the corrupt system to try to make things happen. That's what you're doing. Yes, it's just putting a bad taste in the mouths of us citizens. But what you're doing to manipulate the electoral process is wrong on so many levels. It's wrong. It's wrong. And then spending $9 million to lobby Trump to tell him that there is no Christian genocide. Do you know the thousands of people that have been unalived since you came into office? Say, look, this is my security infrastructure. This is my security plan. Yes, there was a coup attempt against you. It's been confirmed. But trying to, you know, go against the law and go and just be very manipulative and sneaky and crafty like this is wrong on so many levels. Even back in during Buhari's time, I think was it in 2019 when Justin Onoge was removed. That was another slap in our faces. You can't continue to beat a baby and expect the baby not to cry. You cannot continue to oppress people and then be angry at how they are responding to the oppression. It's wrong. The electoral process needs to be free, fair, and credible. You people in the Senate, you people in the House, you are just dancing to the tune of the ruling party. Let me tell you what is going to happen. You're going to find yourself in the opposition one day. And then you will now know that it is the laws that you have passed that have caused you to be on the outside. Talk to Rotimi Amechi, talk to Nasir El Rufai, who they were in the ruling party at some point. And now they are on the outside, being affected by what was done while they were in the ruling party. You can't you can't continue like this. So I would recommend that the ruling party should leave things alone. The opposition party, Obi wants to be president. Atiku wants to be president. Somebody in PDP is going to come and want to be president. Somebody in Labour is going to want to be president. Leave it alone. Leave it. You will win. I've already said it. It is an abuse of office. And people are angry. Remember, 250 million people are more than those of you that are less than a million that are oppressing us. Initially, I'm like, okay, Tinubu is going to win based on the analysis. He's going to win. But the subjugation of our rights, the subjugation of our rights to a free, fair, and credible election. When I see my PVC, I'm not happy. I'm like, so you're telling me that my vote is not going to count? My vote is not going to count. My father told me, he said, I'm never voting in this country again. I am never going to vote in this country. My father has been a poll watcher. My father has monitored elections. My father has been an active citizen since the 60s, and he has said that he will never vote again because the elections are not free, they are not fair, they are not credible. Peter Obi, in fairness to him, he said, let me use the system of government that is there to speak up for me, that is there to stand up for me. He did, and it didn't work. It didn't work. So, and then there was the allegation of the president's background, quote unquote. And the court said it is not Tinubu that has that transferred $400,000 to the federal government of America. It is the bank. It's not Tinubu, it's the bank. So if I commit money laundering, it is not my fault, it's the bank's fault. I'm not, this is just an example of the system that we're operating in. And that is why we're now going outside the Nigerian system to prosecute our Nigerian politicians. Look at what happened to Ekwerimadu. Look at what happened to him and his wife. Do you think they would ever touch him in Nigeria? The answer is a definite no. Absolute no. Look at what is happening to Desiani Maduike. That persecution, the money laundering, she's the allegations against her in the UK, it will never happen in Nigeria. Now Nigerians are lobbying Washington D.C. about terrorism financing by the Nigerian elite. They are now lobbying, saying that you people can punish our leaders because we cannot, because the system is in their favor. This is what INEC is doing. This is how INEC is being used as a tool for manipulation. And this is what kind of, I don't know how we can do democracy where the judiciary can be completely independent. And it doesn't make it possible because, for example, the Supreme Court is the president that brings in the Chief Justice. It's the president. It is the president that appoints these judges. So, as a thank you to the president, the judges may want to rule in the president's favor. I'm just saying, I'm not just talking about Nigeria, I'm talking about the way democracy is being structured. Then you now have the legislative. If the president is in charge of the ruling party, and then people that want to run for the legislative, they want to run under the platform of the president so that they can be elected. So the conundrum is a bit tricky. It's tricky. So when you have that going on, democracy, it's not perfect. It's not at all, far from it. But those kind of modalities within the democratic framework is what now makes it autocratic. Is what makes it kleptocratic. So, and this is what we're going through in INEC. If the people look, it is only so much you can do to press a man's neck. Either he dies or he fights back. And 250 million people, you cannot make 250 million people just die like that. If they begin to revolt against you, it will be a problem. Now, we want an open civic space. An open civic space has its advantages where people can speak up when they don't agree with something, and everybody has a right to that. However, the open civic space also opens room for foreign interference through activism, through pressure groups, through just to go in and cause division for their interest. That can happen in an open civic space. So it has its advantages where anybody can speak up. And those are its drawbacks. That is why places like Russia and China and Iran and some of these other people, because of geopolitics, they're like, we don't want external influences weaving into the population like snakes to influence their opinion against the ruling class. So we just have to figure out, we need to find our voices as a people in Nigeria, find our voices. Or with Nigerians, we don't like stress, we don't like pain. We just want to be able to make enough money to take care of our families and thrive and do pepper them once in a while. Maybe travel abroad for holiday. We don't want stress. Anything that will make us uncomfortable, we don't want. So these are some of the drawbacks that will make Nigeria become, you know, a kleptocratic system, and then you now have a bunch of oligarchs. And, some oligarchs are coming up, I appreciate what Alhaji Dangote is doing. I appreciate Alhaji Rabiu is doing. I appreciate what Tony Lumelu is doing, and a lot of the billionaires that are coming up from Nigeria. Let's just hope that we don't end up having an oligarchy. So these are things that we have to look at that can morph from democracy. INEC has really um, done a lot of work with regards to educating people, sensitizing people, and rebuilding people's trust in the electoral process. Don't now digress all the way back to pre Buhari when people did not go out to vote. People are like, what's the point of voting? What's the point of even registering to vote? The last time I registered to vote was because INEC told me that my vote was going to count. That was why I registered. That's why I have my PVC. Because INEC told me, listen, you are going to be able to vote. Your vote is going to go into IREV, EC8A, from EC8A, go into IREV, and then it's going to be transparent and credible and free and fair. So that is what I was promised by INEC. INEC partnered with several organizations across the length and breadth of this country. You did that. Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, in partnership with CSO platforms such as the Civil Society Situation Room, hosted by the Policy Legal Advocacy Center, the Yiaga Watching the Vote. They've had several fora to talk about the elections, to even empower the democratic process. So, you know, yes, funding comes from, different, because to be able to do these things, it costs money. We can't put our head in the clouds and say, oh, and they are funded by this person, they are funded by that person. It costs money to do these things. So it costs the civil society situation room funds to rent a place at the Transcorp Hilton to bring in all the stakeholders from politicians, civil society organizations, you know, and various other stakeholders, INEC, to come in and to sensitize us. Who would now sensitize the rest of the communities? It takes that amount of work. So Plaque does that, then Yaga's watching the vote. They do the same thing. Samson Itodo and his team. They do the same thing. So what does that say? So now the new INEC chairman, Professor Joas Ojo Amuputan, is actually a son. He is the new INEC chairman. Now I'm trying to just see what's in the mind of Mr. Clement Wankwo and Samson Itodo. I don't know what's in their minds in terms of how they are going to engage with this man. I'm sure they've already engaged with him. It would not surprise me if they already have. But where are they going to start from? And various of us other civil society organizations, Yeni Adamulekun, and many, many others. How are they going to start engaging with these new people? We engaged with the last one. see the outcome. What makes us think as we engage with you, the outcome won't be more of the same? Lots of these people are my friends and colleagues, and they say, look, Efua, Rome was not built in the day, but it was built at last. We have to just continue to work with the process until we get the democracy we need and we deserve and all that. And I don't know, they have more resilience than me in terms of they just keep at it. I mean, they just keep at it because right now you have a policy, the amendment of the Electoral Act that they worked on in 2022. Because I was out there with placards with them in 2022, where they were saying, "Okay, Buhari, sign it, sign the Electoral Act, make it law, sign it." They signed it now. Did they implement it? Not really. Now they are now saying, "Okay, we'll do electronic transmission, but in case that does not work," if you look at the language, it doesn't even say. It says that the mode of transition is at the discretion of the commission. This is in section 60, subsection 4. So, you know, it's optional. So it wouldn't surprise us if ECHA gets manipulated and then uploaded onto IREV, or ECHA just gets driven and manually handed into a collation center, which may be further manipulated. And then you say, "Oh, there was no network." Is that what's going to happen? People are very, very unhappy at the process of what INEC is doing, of what the ruling party is doing. Let me just digress a bit. I'm not saying I won't say I will digress. I watched a video by Don Aza, who is my favorite analyst, and he's a bit biased because he likes Obi, but in terms of his analysis, is as neutral as you can get it, in spite of his own support of Peter Obi. Don Aza said that Peter Obi is not going to lose because he's not a qualified candidate. Peter Obi is going to lose because the odds are stacked against him. It's not going to be a free, fair, and credible election. The political parties are being manipulated so that there's so much division and there's no platform for him to stand on. And then everything is the opposition is so fragmented that even if he collects some votes, it won't be enough to beat the incumbent president. So it's not because he doesn't have the character and capacity or what have you. It's not because of that. That's according to Don Aza. So he's like, look, let's not gaslight ourselves and say, oh, he's not eligible because he's not a worthwhile candidate. So this is the issue. It's a bit of a conundrum with regards to INEC. People do not trust the process. People are not going to vote because they don't trust the process. INEC, what are you going to tell civil society organizations? No, no, no. Talk to me. What are you going to tell the international observers? What are you going to tell them? That it's going to be a free, fair, and credible election? Is that what you're going to tell them? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm trying to imagine myself in the conversation between Samson Itodo and Professor Ojo. I'm trying to see how that conversation is going to play out, or how the conversation between Clement Nwanko and Professor Ojo is Yemi Adamoleku going to be in that conversation, because she has little to no filters. So I'm trying to figure out how that conversation is going to play out, because we have gotten our fingers burnt yet again. So this is this is going to cause voter apathy. Ain't nobody going to come out and go say, Tinubu, you want to come in again? Go ahead. You want to become president, Abi? Keep it moving. So that is the problem. So make the process free, fair, and credible. Make it free, fair, and credible. And Tinubu, you will still win. You will still win with a landslide if it's free, fair, and credible. So, what is up with all this manipulation? What is up with all this, with everything that is going on? And ever since you came in, you've been campaigning for 2027. As you came in, you started campaigning. I've never seen anything like that at all. And I was there during Buhari, the first term, second term, then you first term, barely a year, you had posters out there, Tinubu for 2027. So you've had a huge head start before the opposition. And now, INEC, the law, the legislative, has been captured. So whatever the executive wants, the legislative gives. Then you now have the judiciary, which don't nobody even listen to. It's not being enforced. Because if the judge gives a ruling, it is up to the executive to execute that ruling. But the executives are not even executing rulings that are given by the judiciary, even if they are just. And then on top of some of these judges that are not just. Because if somebody is sitting in charge of maybe the high court or something, you can't bundle all your colleagues that are judges, corrupt or non-corrupt. So it just makes it tricky. The system is the way it is, and it's very, very skewed. So INEC is being captured based on what the law is saying. INEC is being captured. The security agencies are there, to enforce whatever INEC says. And then you have the judiciary that may just acquiesce to whatever the ruling party says. This is not a democracy. This is what do you call it? A kleptocracy? Or autocracy? What do we call this? This is why the people are angry. And this is why people are not going to vote. They're not. You're expecting people to come out and vote. Opposition. Just like Don Azar said, Peter Obi, don't waste your money. Don't. Keep your money. You need your money for your wife and for your kids and for your children's children. Just leave a legacy for them. And whatever you can do with charity, do. Because the system is stacked against you. And it's very unfair because you people that are in the House, in the Senate, in the presidency, sooner or later, you will become an opposition. Ask El Rufai, ask Malami, ask Rotimi Amici. So what you're doing to INEC, you're doing this for the future.